What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're back with another good, the bad, and the ugly. I just want to say really quick that thank you. I wouldn't be half the man I am if it wasn't for you guys. Ever since I started this YouTube thing, I've just been such a happier person and just such a I'm just so happy, man. I finally got my dream car, which is a 350Z, and I know some people are probably gonna be like, he got his dream car at 21 and it was a 350Z, but hey, it was my dream car, all right? And I finally got it. It was because of you guys. I really thank you guys. I also want to thank you for watching these good, bad, and the uglies, because I really like doing these videos because I get to learn about cars that I had no interest in. For example, the Acura Integra, which is today's video. I didn't know anything about this car before going into this, did all my research, and now I know a good amount about it, and it's fun to do. Anyway, guys, let's get right into it. Alrighty, so the Acura Integra, known literally everywhere else besides North America, and actually even in Canada it's known as the Honda Integra. It's an extremely small, little compact car that weighs in at literally only 2,600 pounds. It's front wheel drive, by the way, and technically I guess you can call it a sports car. Some models I would say, like the Type R is obviously a sports car, whereas the base models I would say probably aren't. They all came with a bunch of different engine options and trims, and Honda's always does do that. I just hate that about Honda. They always have like 500 different trim levels. It's just difficult. Anyway, the Integra we're talking about today is specifically the 3rd generation Integra, but I'm just going to call the video Acura Integra since it's the only Acura Integra ever built. Anyway, it was produced from 1994 to 2001 until the 4th gen Integra, or the RSX, came along. The car came with a couple of different trim options, and here's how they went. It went like the RS, the LS, the SE, the GS, the GSR, and the Type R. The one that most people commonly buy and look out for is the GSR, since the Type R is super expensive now, but to be honest, any Integra is a pretty great choice since it's just a Honda, and Honda is notorious for being able to make cheap power out of a small little engine. It's honestly a surprise that Honda can consistently make really reliable engines. It's mind-blowing. The car came in either a sedan or a hatchback. Yes, that's right, it's a hatchback, not a coupe. I mean, technically, yes, it is a coupe, because in order for a car to be called a coupe, it has to be a 4-seater, 2-door car. So technically, yes, it's a coupe, but it's actually a hatchback since the trunk and rear window all open up in one. The hatchback is a way more popular one. For base model Integras, they came with 3 different engine options, depending on whichever trim you get. The ZC engine, now that's not a trim level, that's a name of an engine. The ZC was a 1.6 liter single overhead cams inline 4 that was only available in some European countries, and I honestly couldn't even find how much horsepower it produced or torque, so I'm sorry, but I'm not 100% sure. The North American market got a 1.8 liter dual overhead cams inline 4, making only 140 horsepower and 124 foot-pounds of torque, but keep in mind this was the B18 engine, meaning you can get way more power out of it. This engine, you just slap a turbo on it and you're talking 500 horsepower. That's right, baby. And the Japanese market got a B18 as well, but this B18 had slightly more horsepower, bumping it up to a 142 horsepower and 124 foot-pounds of torque. The GSR got a more revised B18, and now including B-Tech, and it pushed the engine to 170 horsepower and 128 foot-pounds of torque. So they only gained 4 foot-pounds of torque, but gained a lot of horsepower. Very proud of you guys over there, Acura. Then finally, the Type R came with a B18C, and that one made 195 horsepower and 130 foot-pounds of torque, which is once again weird how they gained so much in horsepower but didn't gain too much in torque. So it's whatever though, it's accurate. They don't really need torque anyway. Something I learned, I just want to say really quick before we get into the next section, is while making this video was that, you know how they have like the spider eye versions of Integras, and then they have the way better looking, longer, like rectangular headlights versions? Well, apparently when they initially made the spider eye design, the Japanese market hated it so much that they gave the car a facelift, but only in Japan. Like, why do you think the Japanese guys didn't like it, but the American guys did like it? We didn't like it either. Give us the freaking ones with the normal rectangles. Alrighty, so now it's time to get into modifying this car, and this is where it differs so freaking much. Since Hondas are cheap, a lot of people can get their hands on an Integra. And so what happens when cheap people buy a sports car? They race it out terribly, and that's why you'll see a lot of Integras with like negative 20 degrees of camber, bright like baby blue wheels that are steelies, and broken hearts all over the car, and like tints that are peeling off, and just it smells like cigarettes when it drives by, and it sounds awful. It's cheap and easy to do that, and so it's done a lot, and usually they're just the base model Integras, so we don't really have to worry too much about them. But when it really sucks is when they get a GSR and they do it, and you're just like, why? That was such a good car, and you did that to it. Anyway, the GSR is usually built to look like a nice little show car, but mainly be a street car. It's not uncommon to see these cars boosted, making 400 to 500 horsepower, and so they absolutely love doing that to the GSR. And then the Type R was and always will be a track monster. Actually, when the Type R came out, it was the fastest front-wheel drive production car ever built. And so typically, you see those being built to be a track car, or since they're so rare nowadays, they can also just sit there being preserved for the next driver. Obviously, no one ever drifts these cars since they are front-wheel drive, and yes, you do see them on the strip quite a bit because they are a Honda. Once again though, the main thing for these little Integras is like a street build. That's usually what people go for because usually most people buy the GSR. But now it is time to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the way this works is first I go over the good, which are things that you just can't deny are great about the car. Next I go over the bad, which are things that are take it or leave it. If you don't like it, don't have it. If you do like it, take it. And finally I go over the ugly, which are things that are just god-awful about the car. First is the good, and right off the bat I want to say these cars are an amazing daily driver. Even if you have no interest in fast cars, they still are amazing at getting from point A to point B, since they are a Honda. And if you're too scared to drive a fast car from point A to point B, don't worry, this car stock is nothing special. Next is they're extremely cheap. Besides the Type R, we don't talk about that one here. Even the GSR though, which is the most popular one, only runs you around 5K for a pretty decent one. But the base model Integras are insanely cheap. And sedans, base model sedan Integras can literally sell for less than $1,000. Like, these cars are so dirt cheap. It's amazing. Next is the reliability is through the roof. This is no surprise since they are a Honda, but it still always catches me off guard how reliable these 90s Hondas can be. That paired with the fact that you can buy one of these cars for $2,000 and it'll last you another 100,000 miles is mind-blowing. And if that wasn't enough to sell you over on the car, next is parts and work and like our labor are super cheap, and if you don't want to pay for it, it's super easy to do yourself. Not a lot of cars get to say their parts are cheap and the work is easy, since you almost never hear of it, but that's exactly the case with these cars. They have no added tech that might confuse you. It's not like you have to worry about like cruise control. I don't even think they have cruise control, and it's pretty much the best car to buy if you want to get started learning on cars. And finally, for the good, is the community is absolutely massive. I don't know about the Integra community in particular, but I do know that the Honda community is bigger than Afghanistan, and they always help each other out. These guys, it's like one of them is like, oh no, I have a flat tire, and then like all of a sudden just like 10 Honda Civics just spawn out of nowhere and are right there helping them out. They love to help each other out, and they're a very tight-knit community. But now it's time to get into the bad, and first is cheap plastics. It's a 90s little Japanese economy car. It's obviously not going to have Mercedes quality interior. You just have to realize that. This isn't surprising at all, but if you thought for some wild reason out there, if you were like on ecstasy, oh I can't say that, if you were on something that wasn't a legal substance, then you might think that this car has a good interior. It's not the case. Next is, even though you can daily drive it, it won't be the most comfortable. Some of these models have no AC. Some of these models, well, all these models don't have comfy seats or nice suspension. It's tightly packed. It's got cheap plastics absolutely everywhere. There's no aux port. There's no power windows. They are a 90s car, and not like an expensive 90s car either. Some of the newer 2000s models, yes, they have those things, but if you're going for like the 94 Integra, it's bare bones, okay? It's not like it's a comfortable, awesome car to drive around. Next is, personally, I don't think the looks of these cars are too great. I know many people who who disagree with me on this, so if you do like it, then power to you, but I just wanted to say that this car, in my opinion, doesn't look that great. And finally, for the bad, is the exhaust note sounds like a literal fart. But but that's pretty much every 4-cylinder car anyway. And once again, that's a personal preference. Like, I love the sound of sport bikes, inline fours, and stuff like that, when most people don't. I don't really like that big, deep truck sound. I don't really like the big, deep, like Harley Davidson sound. I like more higher pitched street bikes. 350Z is a nice sound to me. Civics, I like the sound of them. But there are people out there who absolutely hate the sound of them, and so if you don't like it, don't get it. And now it's time to get into the ugly, and there's only two, but they're obviously pretty big since they're in the ugly category. First is, going to buy one is going to be absolutely awful. They are old and they were dailies, and so it's literally almost impossible to find one that has been well taken care of that's actually worth the price. Besides the Type Rs and maybe the GSRs, the people before you were not car enthusiasts like you, so you unfortunately have to clean up their mess. And what I mean by mess is just disgusting, like farts in the freaking seats. You're gonna sit in the seat and like a corpse is gonna like grab you. You're gonna be like, what was that? And it's gonna be like his daughter that he accidentally sat on. It's just gross. It's not nice inside the car. It's disgusting. And on top of that being just disgusting, a lot of people think that they're great mechanics, and the Integra, since like I said before, is super cheap, and so they probably try doing work to it themselves and mess things up. So buying one, you have to be extra careful when buying an Integra. And the last thing for the ugly is the automatics in these cars were just god-awfully slow. People commonly refer to the automatic transmissions in these cars as one of the worst ever produced, and that's saying something. Like, there's been a lot of bad automatic transmissions, and for this car to get the title as the worst automatic ever produced, obviously it's probably not the worst, but the only reason why people say that is because usually people who own Integras are car guys, and so we're not going to like care about a Hyundai Elantra's manual transmission, automatic transmission, but an Integra's is a lot of us have it, so that's just kind of how it works. On top of that, these cars are just kind of slow in general when you first get it. Now listen, if you have plans for modding it, this does not apply to you at all, because they are great cars for modifying. They're a Honda. They can handle whatever you throw at it. But if you just want a fun daily driver and don't really want to get too much into it, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be a little bit disappointed when you pick it up. So, does Mark Roden think that you should get one? First of all, I don't really know why you're listening to my opinion on this, but if you have a thing for building Hondas, since I know there are a lot of people that absolutely love building Hondas, then absolutely, it's a great car. They are just such a good platform to build something on. You can get so much power out of these cars, and for like a fraction of how much you'd spend trying to build up a different car. But if you are looking for a fun daily driver and you're not really going to get too invested in the car, then no. I also think that if you're gonna not modify it, there's millions and millions of better choices out there. If you want a drag car, then I mean, it's kind of on the fence for that one. They're good in a straight line once you do a bunch of work to them, but it's also like V8 cars own the drag strip for a reason. They're good at what they do, and so I would just probably stick with one of those. Drift car is obviously out of the picture, and track car is a bad idea too, unless you plan on modifying it heavily or you're picking up a Type R. If you are, hit me up, let's do some business together. But finally, if you just want a daily driver and you don't care about modding it or going fast at all, this is a great choice. They're cheap, they're reliable, they're front wheel drive, they're great on gas mileage. Just don't expect to beat many people in a stock Integra and you'll be okay. They're just not quick stock. So if you're trying to buy a daily driver and you don't care about speed, yeah. If you're trying to buy a daily driver but you do want to have a little bit of fun, probably not. Alrighty guys, that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See, I always do these weird accents that I don't know where they're from. That could be from Nova Scotia for all I know, but you guys probably do. You guys are probably like, that sounds like it's from here, and I didn't even know that. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, please let me know another car that you guys want to see in the next Good, Bad, and Ugly. A great way to reach me, is on Instagram DMs at ss.markey, but leaving it in the comments helps a lot with algorithms, so I do appreciate it if you do leave it in the comments either way. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Das Vidania, and have a nice night.